Listen up. There's no more excuses. We're empowering those who want the hustle by exposing the status quo.
The days of ordinary are over.
It's time to crush mediocrity and start discovering your greatest potential.
Welcome to the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation.
To the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation.
To the Hustle.
Welcome back to another episode of the Hustle Nation podcast. Today, as always, we've got a real treat. Mr. Mike Hayton is in the house. Mike is from EOS Worldwide, speaker, author, and EOS implementer. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you having me.
My pleasure. We're excited to have you. For those of you who don't know Mike, maybe you know him from the book Process or Get a Grip. Mike, I'm excited to talk about EOS today. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah. I grew up in an entrepreneurial household. Out of college, took a job in banking, much to my father's chagrin, but viewed banking as a great way to get to know my way around a successful business and the mindsets of successful business owners. Spent about 10 years learning my trade and figuring out what I wanted to do when I grew up, and then joined the leadership team for one of my clients. That was the first of 4 experiences I had running or helping run entrepreneurial companies before discovering EOS. 2 were great successes, 2 were dismal train wrecks that taught me a hell of a lot more about myself and my own significant list of failings than the successes did, for sure. And in that 4th experience, which was a frustrating experience, I was trying to find a way to connect with the founding entrepreneur that had hired me to run her business, and discovered EOS in the process, and just fell in love with the simplicity and practicality of what Gino Wickman had built with EOS, and decided I wanted to spend the rest of my life being an EOS implementer, and I've been fortunate to have the chance to do just that.
That's excellent. So, when you talk about EOS, you talk about the simplicity of it. When you first start, you're an expert now, you're, implementer, all that sort of stuff. When you first started, how did you tackle it? Because, to me, we use EOS, read all the books, read your books. But I know initially when we started, it can almost feel overwhelming because there's so much language, there's so much structure, there's so much process to it. And in an odd way, if you have a business that is kind of, running less organized, let's call it, at least it's almost like a messy desk. It might be messy, but at least you know where everything is. Right. So just curious, how do you work with people through that process?
Yeah. By the way, I just glanced nervously at my office to make sure you guys couldn't see it. That might be an accurate description of the situation here. So, well, I think one of the things that attracted me to this being my calling is that it looked to me like, I read Traction. Its first publication date was in early 2007, and I got a copy, in May of that year, I think. And so I had to be one of the first 1,000 people to read the book. And, I was stricken by the simplicity, the practicality, and the universality of the approach. Like there wasn't anything particularly new in there. It was just comprehensive and holistic. And what Gino's always talked about is this is a proven process full of a set of tools and concepts and disciplines that are being used by, then hundreds of entrepreneurial companies. But today it's literally 25,000 or more entrepreneurial companies around the world are using EOS with the aid of a professional implementer, and probably another, 10 times that are using EOS on their own, EOS tools on their own. And so, it's a proven way of making a positive impact in the business and learning to execute better and getting everybody on the same page. So that was a big part of the attraction for me, is that I wasn't being theoretical. I wasn't looking for a management fad or a silver bullet. I was going to teach entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial leaders who wanted the help how to use a set of tools other people like them were already using successfully. That really helped me as an EOS implementer do something that I'm not used to doing as a natural entrepreneur. I trend to the visionary, and I've never met a system that I didn't think I could improve. And so for some reason, when I met Gino and his business partner, Don Tinney, I was stricken by the simplicity of the system. And I thought to myself, if I can just do it the way these two guys are teaching me how to do it, I'm going to be successful. And that was the key for me. And so that's one of the reasons we wrote all the books in the Traction library, is to help people who are implementing EOS, even those who don't choose to work with an implementer, help people get it right. That was why we wrote Get a Grip. We wanted to tell the story of a company implementing EOS the way they would do it with an implementer. So if they wanted to do it themselves, they were going to be better at it than if they tried to do it the way things were exactly laid out in Traction.
Mike, you said something there I really want to go in on, because as someone who's got a long background being an entrepreneur, I've talked to a lot of people, whether it be in networking, clients, prospects, whoever, and you said something, entrepreneurs who want the help. Now, there are some people who say they want the help, and there are other people who actually want it. And then there are some folks in between. To me, I think so often you have to really want the help, and you have to be open to hearing the critical feedback, either about yourself, your business, the process. How important is that? Not just for what you do with EOS, but how important do you think that is overall? And
Yeah.
At what point do we actually get to the point where, yeah, we want the help. We know we need it, and we're willing to do whatever it takes.
Yeah. So, when we talk about the reason entrepreneurial business owner or leader reaches out to an EOS implementer to ask for help, it's usually because they're frustrated by something. If you're getting everything you want from your business, there's no reason to ask for help. You don't need any help. Okay. And so, step one is you got to ask yourself, are you getting everything you want from your business? Has your organization achieved its potential? And are you comfortable with your role inside and working on that business? Because if everything's working beautifully, turn this podcast off and go keep doing what you're doing. Okay. So step one is asking yourself that question and giving yourself an honest answer. And most of us who have ever run a company, there's like 8,000 things we love about it. And there's maybe 8,000 things we wish were a little different and better. And so, it's being willing to spend some time examining those things and taking personal responsibility. If you built your successful organization, you get credit for all the successes, but you also have to own all the things that could be different or better. And then it's critical. Like, you can't help a leadership team that doesn't want the help. And I've tried. Trust me. And so our target market, one of the things we teach in the vision component is we help our clients craft a high level, very simple, very basic marketing strategy. And the first question we ask is, who's your ideal customer? Who are they? Where are they? How do they think? What do they value? And the EOS implementers target market is privately held entrepreneurial companies with between 10 and 250 people whose owners are growth-oriented, open-minded, want help, they're respectful and appreciative, and they're more afraid of the status quo than they are of change. And if you're hardwired that way, EOS can be a helpful antidote for whatever's paining you. If you're not hardwired that way, you're going to need to figure it out yourself or with something that's better suited for somebody who's hardwired like you. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just we don't feel like we can be helpful if you're not willing to go there.
Let's dive one step deeper. You said something about owning it. So often people will say, well, I want the help, but they're not willing to own the fact, especially if you're a true leader of a company, that a lot of these things are on you. And I think that's maybe a trait that a lot of good leaders have, is they recognize that most things that are going wrong is their responsibility, or at least they have some control over it. So how often do you get those individuals that they want the help truly, but they're not owning their responsibilities.
I mean, less often today than in the early days, right? Because my funnel is a little more well-groomed and I'm getting a lot of referral, like my clients who are sending me business and my referral sources who are sending me business are sending me pretty evolved people because they know what those folks are in for. And the books in the library have helped a lot, right? The EOS content is kind of everywhere. And so if you've dipped your toe in the water, it's pretty evident to you whether you're the kind of person EOS was built for or not. You probably choose not to reach out. But you're right. In the early days, I saw all kinds of challenges, but most people are capable of getting there. Like I have a high level of faith in the human condition. Like it's only a matter of when the frustrations of your current situation vastly exceed the fear you associate with significant change. Okay. And so for everybody, where those two lines cross is different. There are some people who will endure excruciating levels of current pain to avoid change. And there are some people who get so bored when there is no change that even when things are going really well, they're going to blow something up because they're just bored. And so it's different from everybody. But, what I always say to people is if you're getting everything you want from your business and you believe the business is achieving its potential, keep doing what you're doing. And if you know things can get better and you're not quite sure where to start, where to spend your time and where to finish, then maybe it's worth looking into something like EOS.
Is it fair to assume that things can almost always get better? I mean, because there are some crazy entrepreneurs like Dustin and I who, no matter what, we'll almost never be satisfied, regardless of how successful or how much we've grown our company.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hardwired as a visionary as well. So, my personal answer to that question is no. I'm an object at rest, and my life is not going to stay at rest. Okay. It's just the way I am. But there are lots of people out there whose dream is to run a $3 million or $10 million business with a handful of people they really love and can trust, that's generating enough profit to support their lifestyle and provide for their families. And they just want to satisfy their clients and have healthy relationships with vendors and go home and sleep well at night. And there is no harm in that at all. I love that vision for your business. Where the pain comes in is when that's what you want, and no matter how hard you try, you can't get there. That's when you start reaching out to people like me to help, and people like you guys to help.
So one of the outcroppings of EOS has been, to your point, this term visionary. And I'm curious in your exposure, I'll share, an experience that I've had, several experiences that I've had, where there's a lot of people that may have read some of the books or been around it, and they kind of just self-prescribe to be visionary. And then the second layer of that is they almost use that as permission to be disconnected from the business. And in my experience, like the best visionaries are really connected to the end user. And so I'm just curious, where do you think, is it just people just glancing over stuff, or like, where do you think that comes from?
Well, first of all, using anything you read as an excuse for behavior that doesn't serve the best interests of your business is a mistake. And there are a lot of people who use EOS as an excuse to do whatever the heck they want to do in the first place. And that's true of anything, our CRM says this has to be our sales process. So it doesn't make sense for our industry or our customer base, but that's what the CRM said. So we're going to go do it. I mean, that's just silly, right?
Yeah. Right.
So, there's visionary tendencies, and visionaries are people who have lots of ideas, love change, like standing still drives them a little crazy. They love big, high level relationships, but they don't want to get into the weeds with the relationships. They're kind of the feel good relationship people. Hey, if you really want to make something happen, let's you and I talk, and then we'll have all the people in our business figure out how to work the details, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, visionaries typically have their finger on the pulse of their industry or their product or service type or the culture in their organization. They're good sensors and feelers. One of my clients said, yeah, it's the person whose ear is to the ground and they can pick up on vibrations the rest of the world doesn't even see. And so those are visionary types. Now, a visionary in a company running on EOS has massive responsibilities to his or her organization. It's a seat on the accountability chart, just like every other seat on the accountability chart, with 5 specific roles the person who owns that seat needs to be accountable for. And Dustin, in some cases, the visionary is accountable for finger on the pulse of the industry or the customer base, or, research and develop latest fads and where our industry is going, that kind of stuff. But I've also worked with organizations whose visionaries were just great business builder visionaries. They have a knack for attracting people who want to work for them and want to do the heavy lifting. And they don't really care about their industries. They just like the art and science of building a successful organization. And so you can't be a successful visionary and not be connected to your business, but you can be a successful visionary and not be connected to some specific aspect of your business where you have no passion and you have no skill.
Well said. So as you look at, obviously you've been around EOS for a long time. What's the biggest, the biggest miss that people have, right? So, I mean, as you go on into implementers, I'll use an example I had in my personal life around a landscaper, right? We had a landscaper that at one time did landscaping for us. And then we hired the second one. And the second one's like, we always get the cleanup job after that one does the first job. So I'm curious, as an implementer, right? I'm guessing there's plenty of times where you're starting somebody that's really never really done EOS, but I got to imagine there's plenty that have maybe tried it on DIY and now they're kind of tapping an implementer to kind of put them on the right path.
Yeah. So here's a couple things I will say. First of all, Gino built this system and assembled the tools under the philosophy that lots and lots of people were going to read the books and download the tools and do this work on their own. And we support and celebrate that, and we'll always encourage people to do that work. When folks reach out for help, they're reaching out for help for a couple reasons. Number one, EOS is simple, but simple isn't always easy. And so what happens when you're implementing a system with a lot of moving parts like EOS has is, and you've got a leadership team of, 5 to 8 people, everybody's going to have a slightly different opinion of how to properly apply whatever tool you're working on in your own unique business. And the tendency for most entrepreneurial leadership teams is to believe that they are completely unique from any other business in any industry on the planet. And so there should be our company way of implementing EOS versus a stock way of implementing EOS. Mm-hmm. And to be sure, there are some things that you can tweak or massage to make them a better fit for your organization. But there's a lot of mistakes that are almost fatal. Okay. Hmm. So a great example is our VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer, is, for lack of a better term, a 2-page strategic plan. It's got 8 sections on it, or 8 questions, where the answer to those questions is a 2-page document that describes who we are at the core, what we love to do and are best at, where we're going long-term, and exactly how we plan to get there. And it's designed to be a high-level 30,000-foot summary of all the detailed stuff that exists in every business that helps you execute on a company's vision. And a lot of times when I work with a team that's been self-implementing, is their VTO has become an 11-page document. And sections that were meant to be filled in with a 3 to 5 word phrase are filled in with 11 paragraphs of stuff. And it's just too much. And they've got 40 people in their organization, and some of them are technicians, and they're trying to share with those 40 people who we are at the core and where we're going long term. And they've overcomplicated things because they can't see the value of an oversimplified statement of intent that we're trying to help the leadership team produce so it can share with everybody in the organization. So that's symptomatic of lots of common mistakes, but it's really the adjustment of what EOS teaches to your own devices that gets people in trouble.
So, Mike, is there more to it? I love what you said about simple and easy. They're not always the same thing, and I couldn't agree more. Are there other tips and ways to make this more easy or easier?
Yeah, I mean, the big tip I say is even if your intention is to implement on your own, I urge my prospective clients and friends who run businesses to start by doing a 90-minute meeting with a trained professional like me, one of the 900 or so EOS implementers around the globe. I would give my mom that feedback if she were running a business. That it's what we do in that meeting is we hand you the cover of the jigsaw puzzle box and we say, this is what your business is going to look and feel like when you're done implementing EOS. And then we say, if you get stuck along the way or the jigsaw puzzle you're putting together doesn't start looking like this pretty quick, call me. I'm here. I'll have coffee or a beer with you and we can sit and talk about what's not working and so on and so forth. That's the only piece of advice. Otherwise, read the books, watch the video content, download the free tools, consider using EOS One software, which is a automation system for the back end of an EOS implementation. There's lots of valuable learning content in there. It's possible to get this right on your own, but you're going to make mistakes. And for the record, you're going to make mistakes when you're using a professional EOS implementer too. I can't tell you how many times I've been with a client for 2 years and I say something in a session for like the 1,000th time. And they say to me, how come you've never told us that before? Like, you should only have 3 to 7 company rocks every quarter. 3 to 7 because less is more. How come you've never told us that? And I literally say that at least 5 times a session. Yeah. So it's just normal human condition, right? We have to hear things 7 times to hear them for the first time.
Well, and I think one of the things that I compare it to is I know like in our business, we kind of talk about there's kind of 3 different things you're battling, right? It's speed, it's quality, and cost. And if you need speed, you might need to spend a little bit, right? But if you want to go, speed and low quality, well then you could probably still stick low cost, but you can't do all 3. You can't be fast, cheap, and high quality.
Yeah, fast, cheap, and good. Pick 2.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And as I'm hearing you talk through it like that, to me is the thing, right? Like, could someone try to implement it on their own? To your point, I mean, it's built, it can be done and they can do it, but then perhaps even they're giving up some quality too. But even if we keep that static, they clearly are giving up a speed element to it.
Well, that's for sure. And, there's a couple of things. Like, first of all, I'm operating at a great advantage over in-house implementation experts in that I've got way more experience with these tools. I know the right answer to 97% of the questions you're going to ask about how to properly apply EOS. I also know when there's a range of answers and to encourage my client to experiment until they find the right way for them. So I'm really comfortable. I don't take this work too seriously. There's lots of rigor and discipline, but I'm also respectful and appreciative of the fact that I'm working with brilliant entrepreneurs and brilliant leadership team members. And if they feel strongly there's a different way to achieve a desired end, I don't die on a lot of hills. Yeah. The other advantage I have is I don't work with the people on your leadership team for the 89 days between the quarterly sessions we run together. And so when I see behavior that's holding the team or the company back, even when it's the owner behaving that way, I'm 100% comfortable saying, Chris, what was that look? That didn't feel healthy. I'm wondering if anybody else on the leadership team noticed that. And I can't tell you how many times just opening that door makes somebody like Dustin say, yeah, actually, Chris, you do that all the time, and it's always pissed me off. Right. And now all of a sudden things are getting good. And it's just easier for somebody who doesn't live with his or her fellow leaders every day to take the risk to have that conversation. And so that's a huge advantage that I have over anybody, no matter how skilled inside a leadership team. It's just easier to change behavior from outside. You guys have a coaching background. The coach who's a player has a 10 times harder job than the coach who's just watching and observing and guiding and nudging from time to time. Same thing with the OS implementation.
What's up, listeners? We've got some exciting news. We're launching a community. It's a private Facebook group called the Strategic Sales Accelerator. And we'd like to invite you to be a part of this exclusive group of sales professionals, executives, and business leaders. Members of this group will gain access to exclusive content, trainings, and webinars. Our content is designed to help users gain clarity and connection to the result, build efficiency, and ultimately attract more qualified leads, build more authority, and generate more sales, all without sacrificing burnout. We understand that rising tides lift all boats. And if you're interested in being a part of a community that's as hungry as you are, I encourage you to check out the link below. It takes just less than a minute to apply. So what are you waiting for? Click the link below and jump in now. Now back to the show. Mike, I want to go a little bit deeper in the behavior conversation. I think this is pretty interesting. I've seen some people who are really good entrepreneurs. They're really good at growing and scaling their company, but they're not great leaders of people. And I think those are two very different things. So when I look at EOS, there's no holes I can poke in that. It's an awesome system, and I know there are other systems out there. However, EOS may not completely change a person's behaviors and skills. And so I think there's probably a lot of opportunity, as you mentioned, when you see people interact with their team and their peers, whoever. What are some of those skills and behaviors that you think are maybe you see over and over again? It's like, if this person could just change these two things, they would be 10 times better leader of people.
Yeah, I mean, there's an EOS tool called LMA, Leadership, Management, and Accountability, and we teach it as a formula, right? Leadership plus management equals accountability. In other words, you can't lead and manage in a way that turns a non-accountable person into an accountable person. But what you can do is lead and manage in a way where accountable people thrive and love being part of your organization, and non-accountable people want to quit. Okay. And again, with the sports background, I'm incapable of communicating without sports analogies. So this is going to be a really fun conversation for me. But if you want to run a championship team, you need to create an environment in which the least accountable people, the people who when something doesn't work are pointing fingers at others rather than looking inward, the people who don't monitor their own attitudes or work ethics, they require coaching to work hard and so on and so forth. Those are the people you want to scare away from your team, because self-created champions win championships, period. Okay. And so that is a skill that is not taught well anywhere. It is very difficult to teach someone who I don't believe anyone is naturally anointed as both a great leader and a great manager. Those are two different disciplines. There are people who are naturally great leaders. There are people who are naturally great managers. Very rare to find somebody who's naturally great at both. And so what we've tried to do is and what Gino tried to do is to simplify this thing and clarify this thing. So we now teach 5 basic leadership disciplines and 5 basic management disciplines, so that people of all natural skill levels at least have a roadmap for improving their ability in that space. Now, if you don't genuinely care for people and you don't want to be a great leader and manager, we can't fix that with teaching. But if you do genuinely care for people and you do want to be a great leader and manager, you can tactically teach people how to engage in disciplines and use tools that will make them better at those two things.
What is the best EOS book to get that information if someone wants to dive
That
deep?
book is Gino Wickman and Renee Boer, Boer, How to Be a Great Boss, is all about LMA. And it's a fabulous book. And it's, again, simple doesn't mean easy, right? So anytime you read a book and you realize you're part of the problem, that means your habits and behaviors have to change. And so I don't mean to make it all seem like simple. You read this book and you're going to wake up the next day and you're going to be a good leader and manager. You still have to do the work, but it really helps give you a bite-sized, digestible, hey, if I get better at these couple of things where I realize I'm not very good, I'm going to get much better as a boss.
So just to follow up on this, one of the other things, self-proclaimed visionary, right?
Yeah.
And then you wrote a book called Process. Those seem like opposing forces.
They are.
So can you share a little bit about that? Did you get tricked into this, or how did this work?
Oh, that's what motivated me to write the book. I'm laughing because after the book was published, just as the book was being published, I did a 90-minute keynote for a big entrepreneurial event here in the Twin Cities. And the subject was process. And there were probably 400 people in the room. And, Gino knew I was doing it. So he called me the next day and he said, how'd your process talk go? And I said, oh man, I think it went really great. I got lots of positive feedback and blah, blah. He goes, so you gave a talk on process to a room full of several hundred entrepreneurs and they liked it? So totally get it. But here was my aha. After 8 years of doing this work, I realized that I was less enthused about teaching process than the other 5 components in the EOS model: vision, people, data, issues, and traction. And that my clients were less good at process than they were the other 5 components. And I realized we were doing the implementer community and our clients a disservice by allowing our personal preference for somewhat chaotic implementation to prioritize the teaching of those other 5 things. And so this was a call for help as much as anything else. Is I needed to learn how to reignite my passion for process, because I truly believe you cannot elevate yourself in a true visionary role unless you have taken the stuff that's naturally in your skull and has been developed and refined and owned over years of building a successful business. If you can't take everything you've learned and translate it into a series of very repeatable habits for your rank and file, you are never going to be free to be a successful visionary entrepreneur, because you're going to constantly keep getting dragged down into the muck, cleaning up messes, dealing with angry clients, firing and having to rehire people. You can't build a great entrepreneurial company without a strong process component. And so, it's a how-to book, but it's a motivational how-to book. And it also seeks to bust the myth that the only way to strengthen your process component is by building 750-page SOP manuals and rigid robotic-like cultures where nobody's allowed to think for themselves. Our approach to strengthening the process component is exactly the opposite of that. We want to systemize the predictable parts of your business so people in the business can elevate and humanize the exceptional. That's a great quotation from Izzy Sharp, who started Four Seasons Hotel Company. That's what we're teaching, and it's very accessible, very simple. That doesn't make it easy, but it's something an entrepreneurial company can do without killing its entrepreneurial spirit.
And I love how you called that out, because I think that's so often the holdup for people, is they believe that process process and entrepreneurialism can't coexist,
Right.
Because they thrive on the chaos. They believe in the chaos. When in reality, to your point, not everything needs to be so rigid that you're hiring robots, right? You got to you're hiring adults and experts that can think.
That's right.
But the alternative that process just shouldn't exist in any case just doesn't scale.
They are not mutually exclusive subsets. I mean, in fact, the thesis of the book is process doesn't destroy freedom, process creates freedom. And you can leverage that freedom for whatever purpose you have. If it's to grow and scale your business in a more aggressive way, good for you. If it's because you want to play more golf or spend more time with your family or be present for your kids' little league game, it creates the freedom to do that as well. So, if you're not free, one of the root causes might be a weak process component in your entrepreneurial company.
Mike, why does it seem that so many entrepreneurs, maybe the majority, just can't fall in love or can't seem to develop a consistent habit for process or SOPs? It seems like some may have some process, air quotes, but very seldom do they really have standard operating procedures.
I mean, it starts from a pretty normal, rational thought of, hey, I didn't have a process manual when I started the business and it was just me. So if I hire smart people, why do I need process for them to be effective? Can't they all just figure it out for themselves? I mean, that's a normal, I don't lose any sleep over people feeling that way. What most entrepreneurs have, though, is inappropriate humility around all of their expertise. So if you've been running your own business for 10 years and your first employee joined at 18 months and your second employee joined at 6 months later, and you got to 10 people after 5 years, and you have like 8 million times more experience in your business than anybody else in that company. And yet I talk to entrepreneurs all the time who will say, I'm the dumbest guy on my leadership team. I mean, I got people with college degrees and, one of them's from the Ivy League. I mean, why do I need a process? And so the bottom line is you're forgetting that the way you learned how to do things the right and best way every time is probably by noticing when you were succeeding and noticing the many other times where you screwed it up royally. And we just, as entrepreneurs, we tend to naturally just quit doing the stuff that doesn't work and keep doing the stuff that does work, because the dopamine that success wheel creates just changes our behaviors immediately. But as your organization grows and scales, what happens a lot is the people in the trenches aren't connected to the outcomes the way you were in the early days. So they don't get any dopamine. They're just doing it the way they do it. They couldn't care less and don't know even whether the result at the end of the day was successful or unsuccessful. And that's when I start talking about that stuff, the light bulb goes on in the head of most visionaries. They're like, oh, that's true. Oh, yeah, you're right. I do that. Oh, you're right. I do complain all the time about how the fact that I told them once 3 years ago and they're not doing it the way I told them to do it 3 years ago is definitely their fault and not my fault for not repeating myself more often.
I had a lot of those light bulbs when I read Rocket Fuel.
Yeah.
Well, the inappropriate humility, I think, is tremendous, because I think we even heard it from other people we've had on the podcast too, of like, it almost comes off as imposter syndrome. Like, well, doesn't everybody know this? I mean, isn't this? Yeah. And I've never heard it said that way. The kind of inappropriate humility. I think that's a great way of saying
it. You're underestimating the value of repetitive experience in a small growing business, and nobody has more repetitive experience, success and failure, than the person who started the company and has been at it for years. And yet, rarely does that person take the time to download everything in his or her psyche and share that with everybody else in the organization in a consumable way. That's all process is. It's helping people from the first day on the job benefit from your years of experience, your years of successes and failures that have turned you into the naturally gut trusting leader that you are, you can't expect a brand new employee, however much education or experience in your industry they have, to be good at that in your unique company if you're not willing to spend a little bit of time equipping them with a roadmap and a set of tools to help make it easier for them.
You know, it seems like a lot of people, when they say, yeah, I need EOS, or I need a strategy, I need something, they're always nervous to jump in. But what I tell people is, regardless of what we're talking about, if it's marketing, sales, business, whatever, is, you know, once you start doing it, it's going to relieve a lot of stress and anxiety. You're going to feel this weight lifted off your shoulders because you start to see some momentum, you gain some confidence. And it's in some cases, when you really see a big tectonic shift, it's like you've done a 180, and it may not even have been that much. But is that fair to say?
Yeah, you know, the old joke about how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? You know, and the formula is real simple for me. If you're not getting everything you want from your business today, and your business isn't achieving its potential, and its impact on your life is not as positive as you had hoped for, then you can keep doing things exactly the way you're doing them, or you can seek to change. And you should probably start the change wheel by looking in the mirror. You know, how can I get different and better to create a different outcome? And how can the rest of the members of my leadership team become different and better? And how can we do things differently and better throughout the organization to achieve more consistently exceptional results? And if you're unable to figure out how to do all of that change yourself, then a framework like EOS, a business operating system like EOS, can give you the framework to start making progress. And you don't have to try and do it all tomorrow either. One of the things Gino did in the early days was he road tested when and how to teach all the tools in the EOS toolbox. And it took him a couple of years to perfect what we teach when, before he started sharing EOS with the world. And so if you follow the EOS process, this item over my left shoulder here, you're following a process that 25,000 companies have used to implement a set of simple, practical tools and gradually begin changing habits and getting better results in their business. And you can trust that you're not the pioneer on this trail, and you're experiencing things for the first time. And so that's, I think, what breeds more confidence in this approach, is that you're not alone, and this stuff is proven to work. And if you just take it one step at a time, you're likely to create a different and better future for your organization and your team.
Mike, let me ask you one more thing. So say, for example, you talk to somebody, or, you know, there is a leader who is on board, he's ready or she's ready to implement EOS, but maybe it's the team, part of or all of the leadership team, that needs the convincing that something needs to change. What do you do in those scenarios? How is that different?
Well, it's almost never that way, first of all. I can't tell you how many 90-minute meetings I've done where the owner is sitting there with his or her arms crossed, daring me to knock the battery off their shoulder. And the rest of the team is looking at me with those pleading eyes going, oh, please rescue us. This is so painful. We could be so much better if we were all still on the same page. So the first thing I want to say is that's probably the rarer outcome than what I just described. But whenever there's one person, whether they're the owner or not, in the room who's skeptical about EOS, I just say, spend 90 minutes with an EOS implementer and let us describe what a company running on EOS looks and feels like. And if you and your leadership team all believe that you already have that, then at least you'll know we don't need to change a thing. But if you hear, when I'm describing what a strong vision component and people component and data component looks like, and I describe the feel of an entrepreneurial leadership team that's on the same page and using the same set of numbers and the same processes to drive execution and so on and so forth. If what I'm describing feels like something you want, but you're not able to create for yourself, then you'll know that EOS is a great fit for you, and you'll decide to move forward with or without your EOS implementer. And if it doesn't feel like a great fit, know that I'll be saying to you, I don't think EOS is a great fit for you. I think you should do X, Y, or Z. Let it lie. Do what you're doing now. It sounds like you're doing great. Or go look at this way of running a business or that way of running a business, or get this coaching. Like, nobody who's selling EOS to the world wants to drag a leadership team into a conference room just to be yelled at for 8 hours. That's not fun. If what we're doing helps you, we're going to all recognize it together in that 90-minute meeting, and we're going to be excited about working together. So,
Mike, this has been an enlightening conversation. There's bound to be a few people that are wondering, I'm really interested. What should their next steps be? Where can they go? I mean, obviously, there's Amazon. You can get a couple copies of the books, which I think are absolutely phenomenal. How else can someone take action, maybe getting involved or learning more about EOS?
Yeah, it's real simple for us, because this was Gino's vision from the start. We built EOSworldwide.com to be the place you can go if you want to learn more. And you can literally do everything we've talked about on this podcast and lots more on that website. You can buy copies of the books directly from the website. You can search for and connect with a local EOS implementer if you want to do that 90-minute meeting. You can find my contact information and reach out directly to me if you want to talk to me. Like, it's the place to go, and there's just a ton of valuable and free content out there. That's an easy one.
And you have a podcast, right? EOS podcast?
The EOS Leader podcast is out there on all the popular podcast platforms, and there are 4 other EOS podcasts hosted by other professional EOS implementers, and that's going to be found on the content or tools or resources section of the website.
I've only read Traction and Rocket Fuel. I have Get a Grip next in my queue, and I can say they are really wonderful books. Very comprehensive, very engaging, and any leader out there, in my opinion, should at least get their hands on one of the EOS books.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, Mike, where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, the website's a great place, mpayton@eosworldwide.com. Please reach out. I'm here to help entrepreneurs get everything they want from their businesses.
Thank you so much for being here. This was an awesome conversation. I learned a ton. Love the EOS system. Folks, if you haven't already, go grab a book, check out Mike, check out EOS, and thanks so much for tuning in to another episode. We appreciate the ears. Peace.
Thank you for being part of the Hustle Nation. If you're serious about raising the bar in your personal and professional life and willing to go all in on your success, head over to hustleleaders.com. Here you can get access to our Hustle Productivity ebook, attend our Hustle Masterclass, or challenge yourself to the 30-day Hustle Challenge. Pairing these tools and training with the Hustle Nation podcast will help you advance to a whole new level. Until next time, stay hungry and inspire those around you to hustle.